In the late winter of 1958, my friends and I hiked through Oadrick's Pass in the Sierra Mountains. There were 9 of us, and we'd all known each other from high school through college, but we were all from different places around the country and the world. Yuri Yudin was from Russia. Yuri was always the quietest of us and seemed a bit awkward, but a good friend nonetheless, once you got to know him. I don't know much about what others thought, but I always had the sense that Yuri had so much more to offer and to express, something he may have possibly kept suppressed. George Haston was from Canada. Russell Burns was from Utah. Russell had been born and raised in the mountains, and from the time his arms could hold one, his father taught him how to shoot a rifle. He knew all there was to know about animals and how to hunt them. Alice Arley, she was from France. Alice was always a bit gossipy, but she was also very humorous. She also cared very much for animals, which added a bit of tension between her and Russell, since she knew he had successful experience in hunting and butchering wildlife. Our friend Alexander Ferrara was from Italy. Alexander was a bit of a romantic. Aside from Anna, he tried on multiple occasions to date Alice and I. But Alice and I both agreed that Alexander seemed a bit much in his romantic approaches. More like a dramatic than a romantic, Alice and I would say. Anna Kung, she was from Korea and my best friend. Her boyfriend was Donald McBeggar. Donald had always been the leader of our little group. We all respected and looked up to him. Anna and Donald had known each other for the longest time, long before we formulated our friendly pack. Nick Martin, he was from Australia. Donald and Nick were the closest of friends you could come across. There wasn't a day where I didn't see those two together, talking, planning, debating. They were always doing something together. Though she never said it, I could tell that Donald's relationship sometimes made Anna feel lesser in value to Donald. Still, she stayed with him because she knew he loved her all the same. But perhaps she felt Donald wasn't particularly good at showing his love for her. My name is Alina Alberg, and I'm from Sweden. My friends and I had all just graduated from California University. To celebrate, we all agreed that we'd take one last memorable trip together before we all went on our separate ways to take on the world. We had made plans to hike up the mountain, ski down this slope, and then wingsuit back down the mountain. It was meant to be a memory of a lifetime that would be shared between us. Perhaps we gave ourselves just that. On the first day, we followed a trail up the mountain. By the end of it, we'd hiked 20 miles. We continued to follow the trail for another day and a half. When the early afternoon of the third day came around, Donald and Nick were talking amongst themselves, debating something. Eventually, they had openly suggested that we hike off the trail because the trail was getting steep and very rocky. We were all carrying heavy gear, which easily drained our daily energy. The pass that Donald and Nick suggested we take was less steep and flat, covered in a thin layer of snow. Donald referred to a map on the mountain and said,
"Looks like there's some flatter ground and a forest over the ridge there to the northeast. Based on the map, another mile north of that, looks like there'd be some good places to ski."
Ever since Donald got to know Nick, Anna became more agreeable with Donald. I think it may have been because Donald had gotten very close with Nick as a friend, and even though Donald still cared for Anna, he would spend less time with Anna than he would with Nick. And though Donald seemed to notice Anna's constant compliant behavior, he never seemed too concerned with it to the point that he would want to talk with Anna about it. At least that's what I sensed from what I observed. Everyone was tired in general from the terrain of the trail, and we were all willing to hike off the trail if it meant receiving a less strenuous experience. This was where things started to become strange. That first night we spent off the trail, as we set up camp and gathered by a warm fire, there was a spooky feeling in the atmosphere. Everyone's silence convinced me that the others felt as I did. It felt like we were being watched. The night was gloomy and unpleasantly silent. Anna snuggled closely to Donald, holding hands. They were both dressed in thick fur coats, wrapped in blankets with gloves and baggy snow pants. We all seemed to hate the uncomfortable silence. Every so often, one of us spoke, developing small talk, but it never went anywhere. We were so unexplainably fearful. Yet, what was there to be afraid of? I thought to myself. We were still on the same mountain, not necessarily under the impression that we could be harmed at any immediate point in time. It was something else, a sixth sense telling us there was something to be mindful of on this new path we've chosen for ourselves. And because of that fear, we couldn't really create any warm, complex conversations amongst each other. The longest one we had couldn't have been more than 4 lines between us. It was also what kept us up for so long. We couldn't trust our surroundings enough to fall asleep right away.
I have to use the restroom,
Yuri said.
Good luck finding one of them around here,
Alice said. Given how dead the mood was, that put a smile on most of our faces. Yuri didn't seem all that amused by Alice's little joke, not because he may have taken offense to it. Yuri's sense of humor was simply very mild and in some cases dark.
You know what I mean. I'll be back in a minute,
Yuri said. Shortly after Yuri left, everyone went inside their tents, one by one, all but myself. For a little while, Anna and Donald stayed up with me.
Are you sure you're not tired, Alina?
Anna asked before she went off to bed. I am, but I think I'll wait up for Yuri just to make sure he comes back safe, I said.
Do you want me to wait with you?
No, you look tired and freezing. You should sleep. The cold doesn't bother me so much, I said. That was actually true. After having grown up in Sweden, these temperatures were chilly but not much different from the winters my home country.
Okay,
Anna said with a smile. I waited patiently by myself for Yuri to return until the coals of the fire burned out. Yuri still hadn't returned. What if he's hurt? That's the only plausible reason I can think of for Yuri having not returned, I thought. Right as I stood to go out and search for him, I saw a figure walking toward the camp in a feeble stride. I walked towards the figure with the flashlight and shined it upon him. Yuri? I said. He was hugging his stomach, trying to keep himself warm, I imagine, and had a shocked look on his face as he stared down at the snow. I've never seen him like this before. I rushed over to him and helped him back to the camp. Yuri, where were you? What happened? I asked. Yuri did not respond. He kept his eyes down on his feet. I helped him back to camp and set him in his tent. Yuri would not make eye contact with me. Try to get some sleep, I said. We'll all talk in the morning. I went back to my tent and fell asleep for the night. Russell got up earlier than the rest of us and hunted some rabbits for breakfast. Alice was shocked and nearly outraged when she saw the 5 rabbits Russell had killed. She refused to eat any of Russell's gains. She did, after all, have her own food she packed for the hike, as we all did, and in any case, Alice was a vegetarian. The only other complaint Russell got for the rabbits was from Alex.
If you were going to be handing breakfast for us, at least you could have done is pack some garlic to go with this rabbit. Or better yet, you could have made it into a stew,
Alex said.
I didn't think to plan that far ahead, Alex. But see, had we coordinated cooking time more firmly, we'd probably have a scenario where I hunt it and you cook it. You are the future chef of my 5-star Italian restaurant, after all,
Russell said.
That's right, my friend. I'm planning on going back to Italy and start building up a reputation as soon as we're done with this trip,
Alex said.
You certainly have the talent for it,
Alice said. Yuri was the last to wake up and step out to join the rest of us. Everyone was happy to see Yuri safe and sound and acknowledged him with warm greetings. Russell offered Yuri some food, but Yuri shook his head in disagreement.
I'm leaving,
He finally said. Yuri still wouldn't look at me, or anyone else for that matter. He seemed very disturbed.
What? Why? What's happened?
Donald asked. Yuri took his time to respond.
I don't feel well. I'd rather not share why. I'm going back home, and I would suggest that all of you do the same. But those of you who continue outward, I say you tread carefully.
Yuri spent the rest of his morning packing up his things and heading off into the opposite direction as the rest of us.
What is it you think Yuri saw last night to make him ditch the rest of us on this trip?
Anna asked me. I haven't the slightest idea, I said.